now, and we'll post this later so that if you have somebody who wants to see this information, you can send them our way, and we can provide the full experience. We're going to ask everybody to stay muted during the call, and if you have any questions, just drop it into the chat, and then we can answer those questions in a systematic way. If we don't have a lot of people on board, we'll probably just open this up and have it more of a forum so that we can all stay involved. And then just a reminder too that we send out email newsletters, and that's a great resource for folks. We do this, generally we've been doing it 2 to 3 times a week, and the latest information that we have, that we get from the rest of the city incident command center and also the state, will make sure people are aware of the latest goings on through the email newsletter. Again, we're going to talk about some construction restarts. City made an announcement late last week about that. Also, the state is still taking information from organizations and from specific businesses as they plan for this recovery. We're all interested in what the governor is going to say on Monday. And we had some relaxation from the state about a week ago about non-essential businesses that could fulfill orders remotely. The classic example was flowers for Mother's Day. So that broadened, at least gave some breathing room for some retailers. And also, we're going to just talk briefly about the Small Business COVID Relief Fund, which we closed applications on Monday, but we have some information for you. The city announced that we're going to have a phased restart of construction activities. We have divided that into 4 different categories. In particular, on the 18th, essential projects, which include some of the city projects that are taking place, will be able to get geared up again. And then starting on June 1st, I believe, we'll begin to work with experienced contractors who have done work in other places using the appropriate social distancing protocols, may be allowed to start construction. And then over the course of the summer, we'll allow even more businesses, more projects to proceed. A key piece of all this is for folks to submit, contractors and owners for that matter, to submit your safety plans. Without your safety plan, we're not even going to look at anybody's application. That's going to be the first piece that we take a look at. So if you are geared up and have a construction project that is hopeful to get underway at some point in the next couple of weeks, definitely submit your safety plan to the Inspectional Services Department so that they can get you to the top of the list. Like I mentioned, the state is still taking suggestions. We should have a link in the chat where you can literally just fill out their form and tell them all you want to tell them about how you think reopening should take place, either for your business, for your industry, or for your business association. I know many in Somerville, dozens and dozens of businesses have reached out to us, and we've referred them to the state's website. As most people know, the governor had an announcement earlier this week, which was an announcement to say that we're going to have a plan ready, ideally on this coming Monday on the 18th, in which case the governor will probably detail a multi-stage reopening effort. As the governor has said pretty much all week, Massachusetts is different. Like New York, we've been among the hardest hit states in terms of impact from COVID-19 across the country. So while you see other places opening up, they have not dealt with the challenges that we've had to deal with as a state. So I say all this to set expectations, perhaps, that we're not going to open up all these businesses on Monday. It's unlikely that that's going to take place. It's going to be a phased, deliberate approach for reopening. But submit your comments, absolutely. And also last week, this may be old news at this point, but the governor, the state's reopening approach has been modified a little bit to allow retailers to assemble goods that are going to be delivered off-site, so you can bring some employees back to help you put together delivery orders that are then shipped out from your facility, but still no customers. The state on the website still has a list of questions and answers that outline all the different essential businesses and all the details about who can stay open, who cannot stay open. We just closed our funding round for the Small Business COVID-19 Relief Fund. And for those who are not aware, we have $1 million of funding, and we're providing up to $10,000 in assistance in the form of a recoverable loan, a loan that disappears once you meet our basic criteria. And so we received 339 applications over the 2-week period that the application was open. And some of the early data that we have looks very consistent with the demographics of Somerville business owners. We have a situation where we have 33% of the businesses that applied are owned by minorities of some sort, and 44% were owned by women. And this compares with the most recent data that the U.S. Census has for the demographic breakdown of Somerville-owned businesses. Back in 2012, which is the most recent data, indicated that 18% of our businesses were owned by a minority, and 40% were owned by women. So we feel like we're collectively as a community and with our partners, we did a decent job of getting the word out about the program. And as a result, our application pool looks to be consistent with the profile of some of the businesses generally. And as you can see on this map that we have here, it looks like we got some pretty good distribution throughout the city. Clusters in Davis Square, clusters in East Somerville, clusters in Union Square, and then along Broadway and Highland Ave, which tells us again that we got a pretty good geographic coverage. Oh, we talked about the COVID-19 Relief Fund. I also want to remind folks about the one-on-one coaching that we can make available to businesses who have questions and have challenges that they're dealing with COVID-19 or for anything else. We can match you up. If you send in an application, we can match you up with an appropriate consultant to work on a problem that your business is facing, and that all that assistance is free. And so if you know of somebody, or if you yourself is in need of some assistance, we'll have that link also in the chat box, so you can reach out, and you'll be helped by Daniela Carrillo, who manages that program for us. And then we're also looking for good news stories. We have been working with our communications team to highlight the interesting stories that are happening in Somerville, the way businesses are pivoting, the new things that they're doing, maybe the charitable endeavors that they're involved with, all related to dealing with this crisis here during, over the last 3 months. So if you have any good news stories, we also have a form. You can put, Nick will probably put that also in the chat box so that you can click and connect to folks, to our team, so that we can highlight with Instagram stories or with local public access TV to be able to feature your business or your story to find out what's going on. And some of these stories have been interesting enough so that the local media's picked them up too, and given those businesses an additional time to sort of take a bow or to profile the interesting stuff they're doing. And that's all I have for here. So I'm going to bring us back to, let's see, yes, okay. So we're happy to answer any questions that we have. I'm wondering if we have Nick Antanavica, who's on the line as well too. We invited Nick, and he was hoping to make it for, it looks like he's not on just yet. But does anybody have any questions or any comments about what's taking place? I don't see any in the chat, but if anybody is interested, just simply raise your hand so I can see you, or just, it looks like Ted's got a question. Let me see if I can, why don't you let's see if we can unmute Ted. Oh, we can hear you, Ted. Go ahead.
Great, thanks, Tom. My question was about schools and daycare, if we have any visibility on the plan for schools and daycare, because reopening our business, part of it is really contingent on the ability for parents to have folks taking care of their kids.
Ted, that's a critically important point, and I know that point has been made to the governor's team as well. Quite honestly, we don't have any insight in what the governor's team is going to come up with on Monday and what the plan is going to be. But we do know already that schools are closed for the year. So Somerville public schools and private schools are closed to the end of June, which exhausts their year. And daycares are closed until that point as well. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but we don't, and we don't have any useful insight whether or not daycares will be allowed to open, or summer camps for that matter will be allowed to open, to give people some relief. More to come on Monday. Hopefully there's a very clear plan from the governor's office. Stephen, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you to everybody for all you're doing, and appreciate this opportunity. Tom, I had a question about the construction. Basically, how there are essential projects. How does that definition differ between the governor and the mayor? How does it differ between public and private, and commercial and residential?
Well, Stephen, thanks for the question. You know that Somerville has been more restrictive than the state, and it has been for the last 3 or 2 months since COVID happened. So in many other places, you're able to do construction so long as you're adhering to certain safety guidelines. In Somerville, we're not at that space yet, and we've announced a 4-stage plan to gradually open up and start construction back up again. We're going to do that very slowly and very deliberately. And so we're definitely different from the state, extremely different.
There'll be, it seems like municipal projects get the go ahead.
Yes, that's true. We're launching municipal projects first because we feel as though we have a lot more control over those projects to ensure that the safety protocols are going to be in place. And then as we move into June, we'll be able to allow other priority projects. And I don't have a sense exactly of which projects are going to be at the priority, although I have been told by many folks in the Inspectional Services Office that the important prerequisite is that you get your safety plans in so that they can take a look at those and be ready to figure out which projects are deemed most essential to get those started sooner rather than later.
So the green line has been going, the high school has been going more or less. Now other municipal projects will go, but what about commercial? You know, we had hotels under construction and office and housing, and those wait until June?
At the soonest.
Tom Bent.
Hey, Tom.
So at the soonest, what does that mean? I mean, there's hundreds of millions of dollars in projects that are sitting still right now. And what I'm hearing from, from other people is that, why are public projects okay to get started, but not private ones? What's the difference?
That's a great point. I think the difference is that we feel as though we have more ability to ensure that safety protocols can be adhered to on those public projects.
Well, I mean, obviously the city of Boston's a much bigger place, and they're allowing private construction to get started back on, for the main part, the 26th.
Right.
Some projects could start the 18th. So I guess, we're having trouble understanding that. Whereas you have the same general contractors that are doing projects all over the state. In, say, Shawmut Construction is one, and Cranshaw is another. They're both up at, either Assembly Row or up at down in Boynton Yards, and they're doing projects all over the place. So, and they're currently, because some of those projects were exempted because they were large residential projects that have been going on since they never really got shut down. So I guess, because what I saw, the guidance from the city, what I also saw was, well, we're opening the public projects up because those contractors have more experience with COVID-19. And I kind of had a laugh at that, because none of them have experience with this at all, other than the guidelines that the governor put out back in March, that everybody has had plenty of time to understand. We've done our plan, it's been submitted, and, I'm getting a lot of calls from a lot of people saying, Tom, we don't understand why our projects can't get going. You know, it makes no sense that a city project can get going and not a multi-million-dollar private project. They're the same exact thing. They have to do the same exact guidelines. They have to have the hot water stations. They have to have hand sanitizer. They have to do social distancing. If you don't do social distancing, you got to have face shields. You got to have masks. So I think that's the real problem here. It's an equity problem also. And, you know, I think we're having trouble understanding that. And again, these projects got to get moving. It's in the city's best interest to get these projects moving, you know, to start getting some money coming back into the city, whether it's permit fees or whatever. I mean, we're going to have the chamber's having a meeting at 4 o'clock. We got a lot, you know, and it's talking about construction with developers and all that, and they need answers. They want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I hear you. It's definitely frustrating. This whole reopening is going to be frustrating, I think, for everyone, not just in Somerville. Nick, I don't know, Nick Antanavica, it looks like you just joined us. I don't know if you can provide any other perspective for folks. It seems to be the hot topic this week, that's for sure.
What am I providing perspective on? I literally just came in about 30 seconds ago.
No, I appreciate that, Nick. We've had a couple of questions about construction and when construction can start, and basically why is the city different, or why? Two questions. Correct me, Tom, if I'm not characterizing it right, but why are we putting a priority on municipal projects when they may or may not be more sophisticated? The contract is more sophisticated than the private projects that are large. And then why are we behind the state, or why are we behind Boston, or why are we time-wise behind some other communities?
Well, we're looking at that because this was what we felt was the best process that we could do for the city with the implementations that we need to do and the staff that we have and the training that needs to be done. Additionally, when we look at other portions of the state, the other aspect that we need to think about too is that Somerville is unique to the state as well as most other places with the density that we have. So that is another consideration that we need to bring into play on this. You know, where we are significantly denser than most other cities in the state and the country, things affect us differently. You know, when we talk about going back and doing construction, yes, we do have a set of larger projects, but also on the smaller ones, our houses are closer together than a lot of people's. So when we're looking at proximity, we have those things to consider. Additionally, as well, we are looking at this from a standpoint of the resumption on May 18th to give us time to see how some of these protocols are going to be put in place. We are reviewing private construction firms' plans that have been submitted. We had phone conversations and communicated with certain ones that have sent them in, where they stand and who is approved to move forward on the first from what we're looking at, and we're reaching out. We are also working with some of the smaller contractors as well to help them develop those safety plans for what we're looking for in order to put them in the best place. So to come and say that we're doing this and we're just stalling, that's not the case. We want to make sure that everybody is in the best position for when they start to do so safely and appropriately. Just because somebody else thinks it's better to move faster is not what we're saying. We're saying we want to move at our pace to make sure that we are comfortable that everybody is going to be doing this in a safe manner.
Nick, it's Tom Betts. How you doing?
Hi, Tom.
And first of all, I want to thank you for you know, you and I have been talking, and I want to thank you for you know, that conversation and what we've been working on. I think that part of what I'm thinking here is that you have two different levels of projects that we're talking about. You have the smaller stuff that's going on in the denser part of the city, and then you have the very large projects, whether they're Assembly Square or Boy and Dad's or wherever. I think you kind of have to separate those when you're talking about this. And because most of those contractors, the general contractors that are doing these larger jobs, are the ones that do have the experience. You know, whether it's Shawmut, they're doing work in Boston, they're doing work outside the area. They haven't even shut down because they were doing large residential work. So they do have the experience and they do know how to get through this. You know, so I think that might be something the city needs to consider. You know, that, and I agree. I think trying to regulate these smaller contractors and what their wherewithal is going to be on how to do some of this stuff is going to be challenging. But the larger contractors pretty much have this down. I know you've seen the safety plans from some of the big ones. You've seen ours. And I think, you know, it's safe to say they're pretty much ready to go. That's why I'm concerned about, you know, the city making a decision that the large public projects could go, but not the large private projects. So I think that's part of the, and just so you know, I'm going to be on a call with the chamber, and we get about 25 people that are going to be asking these questions. That's why I'm bringing it up now.
Appreciate that, Tom. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Oh, I understand that. Ones.
You're cutting out, Nick.
We're having trouble hearing you, Nick.
What we were looking at as well as I've been in communication with some of these larger projects as far as what it's going to. Are you all set? Can you hear me? Okay, let me try that. Usually if I turn off the camera, I can be heard. So what we're looking. Oh. Okay, can you hear me now?
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So what we're looking. Okay, so what we're looking at doing is, like I said, I've been looking at the projects and also asking some of these larger projects what it takes for them to get going. So there's also a remobilization period as well. So I am communicating to them regarding what their remobilization schedule is, what that takes, and determining if we can allow them to remobilize prior to June 1st without actual construction starting. You know, bring in the equipment, you know, start getting the deliveries a little bit sooner, provide the orientation for their guys, because there's going to be stuff that's going on there. So we are looking at some items that can be allowed to occur prior to the June 1st to help everybody ease into this and get going.
Nick, it's Tom. Just for an example, and I don't know if you follow in Boston at all. On some of our projects there, they're allowing us to be on site on the 18th to basically do what you just said. You know, we're bringing all the foremen will be coming in so they can work with the general contractor, and the GC can work with all the subs to figure out the game plan as to how they're going to work, where they're going to work, that type of thing. So they're doing that, you know, like about a week ahead of time, so that on the 28th, we'll be able to, you know, start bringing in crews. And even at that, it's going to be a staggered start on those too. So they're like, I might only, out of my 30 electricians on one BU job, I might only be able to send in, you know, 5 or 6 the first few days or the first week, and then it'll ramp up. We're thinking it's probably it won't be until about June 15th until everybody will be having the job back up to where it was prior to all this. So, you know, I think that would make sense here too. And most of the GCs are, you know, working with us on that already, so that once they know that date, they can start doing that, you know.
No, and like I said, I've been having discussions with them on that to look at what their startup time is going to be and moving in the same direction as that. Basically, just lagging a week behind Boston and the state to see how this progresses and develops. That's, like I said, the mobilization, I know that takes time. So to lose another week for mobilization, I don't see that as, plus the activities in mobilization are distant as well. They're a lot more, there's less transfer ability there in the mobilization tasks
Right.
than when you're in actually in the working conditions. So.
Yep.
Do we have any other construction related questions? Start of a construction. We've got Nick here. We've got some time with Nick. Does anybody else have any questions about how the ramp up might work? Zach, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. At this time, pre-construction, all the things that have to happen pre-construction, applying for a building permit, are those things still being processed at ISD?
Yes. We are at this point. Actually, even through the whole thing, we were still doing reviews. We were still answering questions, doing comments. The only thing that we weren't doing was issuing new permits. We were basically bringing it to the point to when construction was allowed to begin, that they would be allowed to start. The only difference between now and then is that we have the implementation of a safety review now to review the required HASP plans and site-specific safety plans.
And is it fair to say that those safety plans will continue indefinitely?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
And most probably know this, but almost all the city departments have been functioning virtually since the middle of March. So any kind of permit that you're seeking, assuming that's something that can take place and it's allowed by the state or by the city, we're accepting permit applications and we're acting on things. That includes the planning board and all the other land use boards that have been meeting over the last couple months. Ted, it looks like you have a question.
Unmute.
You're muted there, Ted, if you want to unmute yourself.
We had a construction project that was underway prior to the shutdown. So we had permits to start issued, and we are at the point where we need to get a rough inspection. And I was wondering if we should put in the application or put in the notice to the city to start scheduling that rough inspection now in anticipation of there being a large queue, or if we should wait until sometime after the guidance is set.
Well, what I would suggest is that for the project itself, before any inspection is going to be done or the work continues, the safety plan, it needs to be submitted and reviewed and approved. So I would have the contractor, whoever you have doing the work, submit that underneath the existing building permit for that. Once that's approved, then yes, schedule the inspection and it will get put on the list. Right now, I don't see there being a significant large queue coming in. We're all at different stages when they were stopped, so they're going to be resuming at those regular stages. The inspection schedule will be relatively similar to what it was before this stopped. Everybody pretty much stopped at the same time, so we're all starting again relatively at the same time. So that's how the inspection schedule will end up looking. But my suggestion is definitely have your contractor prepare the safety items and have them turned in. We do have examples of job hazard analysis and safety plans on the ISD webpage. We're also in the process of finalizing a contractor helper kit, which will provide the basics for a signage package, a daily checklist, a site-specific safety plan, a hazard analysis, and some instructions on filling those out.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Nick, Tom, I got a question on that. On your submitting your plan or whatever, is that going to be done through the citizen serve, or is it going to just be an email into ISD? I think that was one of the questions that people were asking. I know Boston sent out 3 emails today changing what they were doing, so it's very confusing. That's the other thing that I do want to bring up just in general is one of the issues that we're finding is there's 365 cities and towns in the state, and what I think all contractors' fears are, they're going to come up with 365 different sets of guidances for each community. So I think that's a real concern that everybody has, and I think the concern was, statewide, would they just come up with a set of guidelines? But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So that's a concern that I've been hearing from a lot of people is, what do I got to do? A different plan for every, and my answer's been is, if you look at what the guidance was from the state, which was pretty good, and, take a look at, maybe Boston, I think you're going to have 99.9% of what everybody's going to be looking for. So some of them might want one particular thing or something like that. So I'm trying to allay some fears of some other subcontractors that have talked to me as to, what's going to be required. And we've been talking to AGC and, the Subcontractors Association and like NECA, the National Electrical Contractors. So there's been a lot of discussion about all this back and forth. But the one thing I think is I don't know if it's clear yet how people should be submitting the plans to the city of Somerville.
So yes, and it was unclear because we were obviously changing at light speed here to adapt to this. Initially, it was just email them in and we'll filter it through and get them out. We have actually set up a safety review now for all new permits coming in. So now there is a specific checkoff before the permits get released. So everything moving forward should be submitted in through Citizen Serve. That way it's attached to the permit. That's why it's in one spot and we're not chasing emails and bouncing back and forth. I like having everything in one place. So that's what we were getting towards. It just obviously took a little bit of time to get there. But right now, and previously and through this initial time, we've been issuing letters that say, your project's been classified as essential. You have an appropriate safety plan for this. What we're doing now is through the sign off in Citizen Serve, that will be your approval. We'll have our standard language that once it's been reviewed, your safety plan is adequate for COVID-19 related hazards, you are allowed to move forward instead of getting a long letter and approval that way. As we are becoming well aware, we are going to be living with this for a while, so we're building it into our standard approvals at this point.
Great, thanks, Nick. That'll clear up a lot, I think. And just so you know, I shot you an email today. If whenever you want to talk again on what we were back and forth on, just let me know.
Absolutely.
Any other construction-related questions for Nick?
And just one other thing too, for one other item Tom brought up is, yes, we have received no guidance from the state regarding what these things are supposed to look like, what the requirements are. We had the initial plan for construction that came out from the state itself, but as far as how to inspect this, how to comply with it, we really haven't had any direction. What we have been doing though is the communities have been talking. So we've been talking with Boston, we've been talking with Cambridge, we've been talking with Arlington, all of the communities around us. We have been talking to develop similar and common criteria. So if you look at it, you know, what Boston asked for is pretty much what we ask for. We may use different terms, but it's the same thing. I believe they look for a certified affidavit. We look for, you know, the safety plan, and we don't actually require the certified affidavit until after, or the third party safety inspector until after the first violation. So, you know, we're trying to give people a little bit of leeway as opposed to, you know, starting right off the bat with the added costs of having a third party safety inspector right off the bat. So we're hoping that the contractors are going to be following their own safety plans, but we do have that protocol set up as one of the consequences if we find that there are violations. So.
Does anybody have any other construction related questions for Nick? Does anybody have any other questions? Speak now or hold your peace until next Thursday, I guess. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, again, we're all eagerly awaiting the governor's word and the word from the governor's advisory committee on Monday. And hopefully we'll all have more clarity about how this will roll out. Some of the other things that the city is starting to do in terms of preparing for our reopening, we're obviously aware that restaurants have been hit hard, and we know that as we come out of this, there are going to be new rules on restaurants that are going to enforce social distancing in all sorts of manners. So they're not going to have the same capacity as they once had. And so we're looking with a cross-disciplinary staff to try to figure out how we can make better use of our public spaces, whether they be sidewalks, streets, parking areas, parks, parklets. We're starting that work to just strategize and figure out what kind of resources we have. And at some point soon, we'll be in a position to see what restaurants, retailers, and other first floor businesses will need. And we'll have further clarification on Monday, I'm sure, from the state's team, so that we can start to put together plans to make use of that public street frontage and that sidewalk frontage. So that's not going to be an easy task by any stretch, and we'll probably face a challenge where there are areas in the city where we just don't have enough space to accommodate all the needs of every business. In some of our dense business districts, there are going to be some conflicts that prevent us from giving a restaurant all the sidewalk space or parking space or drop-off space that they're looking for. So I look forward to working with many of you folks here on this call, a lot of our partners, including Jessica at East Somerville, at Union Square Main Streets, and also the Chamber and all of our other organizations to try to troubleshoot and figure out how we can make those accommodations, because certainly this whole summer, we're going to be in need of additional ways to support our businesses. So more to come there. Stephen, looks like you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Thank you for everything you're doing in this regard that you've done already, and also looking at expanding the public space or the space for restaurants. We're probably meeting at 11 on Tuesday. So everybody here would be welcome if you want to take part in that. Dining and Nightlife group will be meeting. So I think it'd be very timely to share some ideas and explore the possibilities.
Yeah, I'd love to join you. So this is just so everybody's clear, this is the Chamber of Commerce's Dining and Nightlife Subcommittee. They've been meeting on Tuesdays, and it looks like they're meeting next Tuesday at 11. Yeah, I'm happy to join on that call to hear some specific concerns people have and specific solution sets that they might have. We're all ears. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Tom, I just want to express appreciation for all your efforts, of course, but especially this open air commerce. When talking with Brad Rosson and his team late last week, I know that really, like you say, cross-disciplinary approach. And Union Square, Main Street just stands ready in whatever way we can serve to help with pilots, because I'm going to emphasize on this call one more time, time is of the essence, and every day that is used for planning and refinement for perfection, when it could be a day of piloting and refinement as we go, has really serious and significant impacts for our businesses. So Main Street is here and excited to be plugged in to support a pilot in Union Square just as soon as possible.
Looking forward to continuing to work with you. Something I did not mention, and I think might be obvious to folks, but it looks like we're past the surge. And so things are looking up from that perspective. It looks like we got through this. We still have some major challenges in the city. We've had 17 residents who have succumbed to the virus, and we probably will have more too. But it looks like our healthcare system has been able to weather the storm. And so personally, I hope that means that we can start to tackle some of these other complicated problems that are not necessarily health related, but are more economic in nature. So look forward to working with everybody. And if you have the time, continue to join us here on Thursday afternoons if you have concerns. But you can always reach out to us either individually. You can send me an email, or you can send an email to the Economic Development team email address at economicdevelopment@somervillema.gov. And that gets sent to all of us in the office. So somebody will answer it fairly quickly. So keep that in mind. And if you have any thoughts and ideas, send them our way. We'll take a look at everything and we'll share those with our colleagues who are busy trying to solve these problems. All right, it looks like that's it. I appreciate you joining us this afternoon. We'll see you again soon.